Hey everyone, Cycroyasin here, and welcome to the final episode of Pointy Chins, where I conclude my art journey. Well, hopefully not, but I do conclude this series. So, here is a continuation from what I was doing at the end of last episode, which was figure drawings, where what I did was I started by doing the drawing, and I did it with black pencil, and it was 45 seconds. So I'm using an app called Gesture Drawing, and what that does is it allows you to use any folder you have, like the images within, and it puts them in the gesture drawing format. So you get a timer and stuff. So I work with 45 seconds, and here I was using pencil. So I drew 45 seconds with black, and then it goes to the next image. So then I went back one to the previous image, but I used white pencil for this one. And I found that I didn't really like the white pencil. Like doing the shading and stuff, it felt slow and not nice. So I kept the black pencil to begin with, but then I used a white hard round brush to get the shading, and I liked it a lot better. So when I squint anyway, it looks nicer to me with the hard round brush. You get the bigger shapes. You can make the brush bigger and just sort of like blob in things, as opposed to blocking in. I suppose it's blobbing in. So I did that, and it was like, okay, that's fine. But then I had an idea, which is, what happens if instead of starting with the drawing with black and then going to white, I went the other way around. So in this one, I actually started with the white blobby hard round brush, and then I did black with the pencil. In this case, I used black to kind of define what where the darks were, and also the silhouette. So so for this one it was hard round and then pencil. But then I thought, what if I just use the hard round for both? So I use a hard round brush for the blobbing in light, and then the hard round for the blobbing in dark. So that's where these started. So first kind of blob in the lights, and often I'm using this kind of very light opacity for the beginning, where you can see the difference between the background and the figure, but there's not too much definition. And then I keep going over the areas that are light. So it's a bit like how light actually works. Where there's more light, things get brighter. Where there's less light, they get darker. So in this case, the background itself functioned as sort of a middle value. But I didn't use that necessarily, because at first I lighten pretty much everything in the silhouette. Then I darken areas that need to be darkened. And I found this actually was really good. At first it was very uncomfortable to do, because it was such a departure from how I was used to thinking. But I felt like this way of working is fine, and still sort of had the same figure drawing feeling that I was used to. But this way felt like I really was doing something completely different. It felt like figure painting instead of figure drawing, where rather than think in terms of line, you're thinking in terms of shape and value. So yeah, I kind of like this one, and then this one's okay. Again, I was finding that certain areas were light that I didn't expect to be light. So for instance, like this, the butt got light, but then the rest isn't that bright. And some of that has to do with the fact that there's still 45 seconds of light and then 45 seconds of dark. So I don't have that much time. So in some cases, like maybe it does get a bit lighter up here, but I just didn't have time to flesh that out. But I tried to get the biggest areas done as fast as possible. So in this case, like the butt cheek got the brightest, and then, you know, the back is less bright, the thigh is less bright, even this other butt cheek's less bright, but this is the big highlight. And I saw that quite a bit with butt cheeks getting bright. In this case, the head area is kind of the brightest. In this case, it's the shoulder, like this area. And that was here, it's kind of this area. And that was kind of cool to see that, okay, there's kind of spots of light that really hit one spot much more than others. And then it kind of goes out from there. So you get your big highlighted spot and then kind of fade away. And you might get bright areas, like in this case, you know, it also lit up on the leg, but it's not as bright as here. And this is kind of like the main light. And then, yeah. So that was really cool. And I felt like I learned a lot. So I thought, okay, let's keep going. So it's the same thing here, just practicing more of the same, blocking in the figures. Like this one I like. I feel like when I squint, I can sort of see the painting that this could be. And I think maybe I'm better with value than... Actually, I'm quite sure I'm better with value than line. So maybe that helps me as well. But yeah, I really like working with these blobs. This one was definitely difficult because it's... I mean, in total, it's 90 seconds. But getting two figures and sort of the values and everything in place, that was difficult. But I feel like I've not really seen this before, and it was a very useful technique. So if you're someone who wants to get into painting, I think this is really good. It still helps to know anatomy, of course. Like the things you get from figure drawing, with drawing and not painting, all apply. But this definitely does give you a much better sense of how to block in things quickly with value and understanding value, and maybe even three-dimensional structure. So yeah, more here, more of the same. Start with white, then go to black, everything with a hard round brush so that you can make blobby shapes. And I suppose the difficult part is to manage the size of the brush. That's one huge thing. And then also manage the pressure of the brush. So if you press too hard, it's going to get too bright too fast. And if the size is wrong, you'll be making kind of like this, like the shape was too big because the size of the brush wasn't right. So a lot of the time is spent adjusting the size of the brush. So what I tried to do is start with the biggest brush I can, and then kind of do everything with that size, then shrink the size down, then do everything with that size, and then shrink the size down one more time and get in more detail. So in that way, you've got three sizes of brush to work with, and then try to get the figure in as fast as possible. Or not as fast as possible, but within the time possible, get as much as you can. So then I thought, what if I spend a bit more time on it and increase it to 5 minutes? Because I was just doing 90 seconds and it felt like, okay, what then? And actually, I didn't like it as much because I felt like I really tried to keep the big picture in mind, but it's harder to get many figures done when you're spending more time on each one. And you get more towards the noodling stage. Like, I feel it's too quick to get to the noodling stage, but it's still okay. I think what would be good is to maybe ramp it up where you start with a bunch of quick ones and then maybe slow down. And then I tried it with the same thing, but with pencil to see if that worked better, still keeping it at 5 minutes. And I really didn't like it. It didn't feel good because with pencil, you're kind of making lines. So you either have to go around the form, and that takes a while. You just can't blob in shapes as easily. So then I went back to the 90 second, 45 second light, and then 45 second dark, and whatever. kind of ran out of steam. So yeah, there's just these ones. And then I moved on to a picture of Kay. I was wondering for Kay's universe if they fly in ships. I won't say a lot, but they do at times. And I thought, what if the steering wheel of the ship is a controller instead of a steering wheel? So that's why she's kind of got like a controller. And then, yeah, not much to say about these, just, proportionate stuff. Then I wanted to try just doing sketches, but with the white and then black thing that I was doing in the figure drawing. And then here I did this blobby figure, but I felt it was like very unstructured, and that when I do things in this way, you get sort of big picture stuff, but I was making mistakes with just basic anatomy. Maybe it was just too much at once, but it was kind of like, wait, the perspective's off, the proportions are kind of wonky, and the anatomy's off. So I tried to draw it and get a bit more structure, and then add detail, but still starting with light and then going dark. And yeah, I guess it's kind of one of those things where when you work on one thing in particular, in this case, values and light, and just bigger shapes, it's hard to maintain other things. And sometimes I hear this from students who think they're getting worse when they're learning, like, oh, I'm studying perspective, but I'm getting really stiff. That's normal. Because what happens is when you're focused on one thing, it means that energy has to come from somewhere. And until you reach the point where you're comfortable with whatever the new knowledge is, likely the thing you're working on is going to take up all your brain energy, and you won't have enough to devote to other areas. So I wouldn't get discouraged if you are if you're learning something new and finding that the things you used to know are kind of falling away. So I read this book. I was recommended this book, actually. Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art by Scott McCloud. And it talks about how you can... if a style is super simple, you can relate to it more. Like, if you just have a smiley face, that could be anyone, right? Because it's just a super basic thing. Whereas if you have a very realistic face, that can only be that one person. It's hard to relate to that person, but it explains a lot. Like, you can clearly see who that person is if it's a very realistic drawing. But if it's more abstracted and simpler, then you can get an idea of what the expression is, what the character, I guess, general things about the character. Do they have long hair or short hair? Is it a male or a female? Things like that are easier to get across, but it's harder to explain, what is this character's nose exactly. However, because it's so vague, you can kind of see it as yourself. So you could see yourself in it, or you could see people you know. So it's easier to relate to simpler characters, and I never really thought of it that way. I was thinking more about style as something that's cool to look at, as opposed to style as something that could be either one. And I think with artists, a lot of artists, especially younger artists, or people like me who are old but kind of dumb, you tend to think about the look of things as opposed to the meaning of things. So, instead of the purpose, like, why do this? It's more, do I like how this looks? And so everything seemed to be an aesthetic judgment. Like, is this good? Does this look good? As opposed to what function does this serve? So it made me think about Kay more. And what am I doing? And one of the things that also was said in that book, well, there's a bunch of stuff. It's a great book. I would really recommend it. Understanding Comics is a very, very great book. I learned a ton from it. And then also, Scott McCloud has 3 books understanding on teaching comics, and it doesn't just matter for comics. It works in general art as well. But he has Understanding Comics, Reinventing Comics, and Making Comics. And I would say Understanding Comics and Making Comics are very good. Reinventing Comics, not so much. It's not that necessary. But the other 2 are really good books. But the other thing was that making the backgrounds realistic, but keeping the characters simple, means with the backgrounds you can explain things, because realism helps to explain, what is this? Describe it. What does it look like? And then the simpler characters help you relate to them. So you want to relate to characters and understand the background. So that's why in anime there's often like realistic backgrounds but super simple characters, which was really like, oh, okay, that's why it's done. I just thought like it was laziness or something. And I really liked French styles, because to me the French tend to exaggerate both the characters and the backgrounds. At least some of the styles, not all of the styles, but some of them do that. And then I thought that was better, because it's like, oh, you're treating everything as if it's one world and everything gets stylized, whether it's big or small. But in a way, it's not absolutely necessary, although I still really like when it's done that way. Like if you look like at a movie like Triplets of Belleville, they stylize everything, and I think it's super cool. Okay, so then I started thinking about the logo again, because I wasn't happy with... I never really got a logo that I was satisfied with. And I was trying to think of ideas, like maybe Space Waitress, this could be like a diner, like it's written in neon, and then K. I wanted K to be kind of feminine and sort of different than these. And in this case, I wanted the S, W, and K to be lined in a way. So I figured Space Waitress K is a handful to type. So people will likely be simplifying it to SWK. People, if anyone reads it. So I wanted the SWK to read primarily. And then that was the idea anyway. So I made them all about the same size, as opposed to this idea where Space Waitress is really small and then K is big. And I thought about the color, so I just started with K's colors, the color she has for her hair, her skin, and her eyes. And I wanted to have that in the logo so it feels like it's related to K. And I saturated it. But the problem is these colors don't actually... They are like the color of the skin and the color of the hair and the color of the eyes, but they don't represent her colors really well, because they're in context in the palette. So in the palette, everything is very purple and bluish. So this skin looks green when it's sort of in context, but out of context, it's blue. So I had to adjust the colors so they're back in context under white light, and so they got this. And then I saturated them some more and lightened them because this felt a bit dull. And then I tried this thing on a white background and a black background. I wasn't really happy. Like, I didn't mind the black. I thought, I suck at this, and I got frustrated. Sometimes it feels like all I ever have to convey is frustration. That's how it feels a lot of times, like with the drawings, like, God damn it. And here's K. When am I gonna be done? You're taking forever. So trying some more K, and yeah, it does feel like it's taking forever. And when am I gonna be done? And because you're aware this is the last episode, you can see what you're gonna be done soon. But I feel like in life in general, you often feel the worst before the end. Like, you're close to the finish line, or you're close to the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's when you most feel like giving up. because you just can't see it. You can't see that you're almost there. It's almost over. The struggle, the pain, everything is almost gone. And I noticed this a lot with Flavia, that she tends to give up at around 90% completion when her images are like, no, it's actually working. You're almost done. It's almost, it's just a bit more. It's just a bit more. That's when she starts to feel like, oh, it's never going to be done. It's never good. And here, this black one is just this one, but the silhouette, because I wanted to see the shape. So I could get a sense of, what is Kay's silhouette? Is it strong? Here's a blute worm. She's pressing, and kind of a more chibi look, which isn't necessarily the look that is going to be there, but it's one that I kind of want to work on. If you're curious about these lines on these circles, I draw the circles in the background. Here I was just trying to practice ellipses and get the minor axis and the major axis. The minor axis is the short axis, where if you took this and folded, if this was a piece of paper and you cut it in the shape and you folded it in on itself, it has two ways that it can be symmetrical. So you fold it and it goes on itself. And the long one is called the major axis. The short one is called the minor axis. So drawing Kay, and in her uniform, and doing these minor axis thingies, and then just drawing the characters that, like, this isn't a character in Kay, it's just the proportions, because I realized, like, yeah, I've got to draw this a lot in order to get comfortable, because once you do it enough, once it's boring, you've done it so much that it's boring, then you start to do interesting things. So playing here with some more shapes, and I would say the style is getting to the point where it's pretty, like, it's not super consistent yet, but it's definitely a thing. If I just saw someone's art like this, I would say, well, they still have room to grow and stuff, but definitely they have a direction, they have a style. And that's a lot of what I was trying to get, where before this I was very not focused or not sure what the direction was. So here I was doing her uniform again, and then I like this one where I like the outfit where she's I don't know, her casual clothes. So I actually prefer drawing her in her casual clothes than her uniform. So I figure maybe there's a lot more cases where, especially in the beginning, where she's wearing her casual outfit. Again, she covers her arms to hide her scars, and the rest is, just she's athletic. So it represents her sportiness, I guess, and just doing different expressions, trying to get used to drawing the character. Then I wanted to color it, and using the technical pen, so all the outline is very even. But I'm not a huge fan of the technical pen, really. And I was starting to feel like it's okay, but it's sort of at a certain point. And the reason I was doing it, though, is because it makes it very easy to fill the colors. And that's pretty much it. It just saves time. So here's another K where maybe she's crying, and these are like the sparkly tears. Just trying to figure out symbols, and then working on the style where I can draw different types of characters, like big guys and skinny guys who have different posture. Wanted the gesture of a guy like determined and walking forward, sort of a mocking character, a lazy character who's kind of or maybe not lazy, but sort of depressed in a way. I wanted this one to have a good S-curve to it, but still a little bit more structured. So the thing I noticed with gesture is when you make it too fluid, you actually lose a bit of reality, because you lose some of the weight that's necessary. And weight is created more from things being a bit stiff, actually. Whereas flow is where everything's flexible. So you kind of want to have areas where things are flexible, but there's also a certain amount of stiffness to give that feeling of solidity, weight, gravity, things like that. Or strength in the case of like a punch. It's very direct, and you have to manage these things, like how much flexibility do you want and how much rigidity do you want. And before, I think I was obsessed with gesture and fluidity, and I saw with like Disney movies, they would have this, especially in the older classically drawn Disney styles. When you look at it, there's a lot of fluidity. Everything's built off curves, and the issue though is everything feels a bit like it's not connected enough. There's not enough force behind it. There's just a lot of everything's on curves, everything's on circles. And Flavia first pointed it out to me. I never really thought about it, how it all looks too smooth in a way and unrealistic. So then I started looking at it. It's like, yeah, that's true. Sort of has that. Okay. Then I did some more figure drawing because I thought, well, I haven't done that in a little bit, so let's do some more. That was good practice, so just did some more. It's kind of weird doing this stuff because when I do the painting stuff, it moves me more towards painting, and it's such a different world than drawing, especially when you're drawing more, like in this case, it's a bit more proportionate and realistic. And you contrast that with the K stuff, which is very, very simple and just line-based. Really doesn't have much in terms of value whatsoever. It's kind of two completely different worlds, but I would like to be good in both of them, and I would like to have one inform the other. So I would like, for instance, the painting to inform the drawing in terms of lighting and how to make dramatic shots, how to make things interesting, and I would like the drawing to inform the painting in terms of simplicity of design, larger shapes, good distribution of small, medium, and large, those types of things. So I think both are really good, and there are people who do both very well. Kolesov comes to mind. There's lots of artists coming out now who seem to have a good grasp of both of these things, the painting and the drawing. So drawing more figures, trying to get used to the simplified form. It's really important to be able to do them, in my view, to do them fast and consistently. So, working on this kind of, can you tell a story with the silhouettes? And yeah, I think it kind of reads. It's a bit overdone, a bit dramatic. And yeah. So here's maybe a young Kay when she's traumatized. Here's Kay flirting with a chicken or something. I don't know. And some old dude and some guy who found some treasure. So yeah, trying to play more with expression and storytelling and not just the proportions, but kind of how to use them now. And then I had finished reading Understanding Comics, and I was on to the third book, which is Making Comics. And Scott McCloud has these images for the 6 basic expressions, where if you mix these, you get all the other expressions by combining these. But I realized with Kate, the style is a lot more simple, so it's going to be a bit tricky because they don't really have noses that are too defined. So something like this, where you have a lot of information in the nose, is kind of hard when the nose is just a little line and you don't get these side wrinkles on the side of the face. So I tried to get that in different, like, what's discussed. I couldn't really get it because there's too many details that are necessary in this. So I tried to stick the tongue out, and I realized, like, well, yeah, if your style doesn't permit you to get a lot of details, then often the way to go around it is to use symbols, like, like the teardrop beside the head, or lightning between people to show that there's animosity between them, things like that, like fear, maybe there's kind of sweat coming off. In this case, surprise, it's just random tick marks. Not happy with any of these expressions, I would say. Like, they just feel not good enough. But I think part of that is because it's sort of an unnatural exercise, because even this seems a bit weird where they're just looking straight on and having these expressions. There's not much context. But I still think it's good to know, what facial muscles move in surprise. Like, you get furrowed brows, the mouth moves open, things like that. And then I saw this model who had a very similar body type to what I imagined Kay to have, and she was a real life person. So I think these are always good when you see the real life equivalent of something you're trying to do in a style, because then you can use that as reference and learn from it. So I drew Kay. I felt like the nipples were a bit small for what I had in mind for Kay, so I made those a bit bigger, but the rest is roughly the same. And then I colored it because I wanted to see what it looked like in color, but I'm really not happy with the way I painted this. It just feels crappy. I don't know. The colors look kind of bad. I don't mind the face too much. There's some color variation that I got, but I don't feel like it looks good. I'm not happy with that. I preferred it a lot more in the black and white. And that tends to happen where I kind of screw things up once I get to color. So here, working with proportions as well. Just draw the things over and over and over again until they're second nature and you're comfortable with them. That's the name of the game. And then I thought about what I'd mentioned before with the technical pen. So I was thinking the technical pen, I don't really like the way it looks with this one super even outline. And so I tried using the dry brush. And the reason is really the Scott McCloud bookmaking comics. I was seeing how much effort he was putting in, and that I was doing this thing where the reason I was going to use technical pen is because I wanted it to be easy to color. And why I wanted it to be easy to color is because I needed help with the colors, and I thought I would have Flavia help me. And I wanted to make it easy for her to color quickly. But I realized what that was doing is I was sacrificing quality for the sake of speed. And I shouldn't do that. Like, I should trust that, no, if I do a good job, it'll be more fun to color. So even if it takes longer to color, the end result will make it more worthwhile. And I was a bit, humbled into that. So that led me to go back to the dry brush, which I did like the look of because it's got this nice thick to thin. And I had trouble with the dry brush originally. I was using it at I think size 7 or 7%. Here it's at 15%. And the problem with when it was small is it was hard to drop fill. But I realized when I made it 15, the lines got thicker, but it also made it easier to fill the colors. So I did that, and then it started working. So it wasn't taking that much longer after all to color it. And then I thought, okay, that's cool. I get to use more ink and have line width and sharper lines. So it felt like something that was missing from the style, but that was there then. And for the longest time, I wasn't really thinking about things like line variation and line width, because they always felt like distant issues. things that I will tackle later. But right now I'm kind of busy. I have other things to deal with, like proportions and anatomy. But because I was doing a lot of proportions and that thing where, okay, draw and then keep drawing and get familiar with it, I finally got to the point that I realized, I think the proportions are okay now. The style is roughly okay. The anatomy is roughly okay. It is time to start thinking about these more surface issues like line width and detail and stuff like that. How do you add variation? How much shading do you add? Because I kind of like this where the clothing is indicated through lines. And then I drew these two as a sort of a process. So start with a sketch. So yeah, I'm okay with the sketch, nice and messy. Then I use the pen, and I really liked how, with the line width it looks a lot cooler. I like how I can add thin areas even with the same size, like it's still the 15%, but you can get pretty thick with the lines and then pretty thin. So I really like that. And it has the feel, I'm using Procreate, it has the feel that I don't get with Clip Studio Paint and the G Pen. For whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly why. It just doesn't work the way I want it to in Clip Studio Paint with the G Pen, but it works just pretty much how I want it to with dry ink at 15%. Then I add the flat colors, which doesn't look that good. Like this, I would say looks the worst in terms of the stages. But then when I add color, it I add shading and I also balance the colors, then it feels good again. So I'm actually quite pleased with the way this looks. And then I did have this shading in the pants and stuff, which I'm not sure if I would keep in K, but maybe. Because so far I've just been using flat colors for areas. I don't add tone in terms of hatching or anything like that. But maybe it's something that is a good idea to add. And so I drew Kate again. Didn't really have a back view of her with a different outfit. So I wanted to do that and also color them and use the line width variation. So you can get some thick and thin lines. And I think it works. I think it looks fine. I didn't want to add a bunch of lines on her because it felt like maybe that's not the best way of showing smoothness, and I wanted her to feel kind of smooth. But yeah, I mean, this proportion's kind of bad, but the rest it's okay. Don't like that I don't the hair too much, but a lot of that has to do with perhaps not understanding it well, because even when I draw this, it's like, yeah, how does the hair kind of flow over? Confused about that. And so yeah, here's the sketches, and then here's and I like this like rough sketchy look, but yeah, it's okay when it's cleaned up as well, I suppose. And so I was I was talking about this, how I'm confused about Kay's hair, and I was thinking, okay, this is kind of a thing where I do know, like, I think it's important when you want to figure something out, like find what you do know and then try and find out the rest, but first find what you know. And so I thought, well, okay, so I kind of know her hair does this in this view, and then how do you make it work? And I thought, well, if you lift this hair, this strand will go all the way from here to here, so it's gonna like lift and then get pretty tall when it's all straightened out, and then it's going to have this curve down. So this hair is still really long, but not as long as the tip, but it's much longer than it looks when it's, folded over. And then I was curious about what would that look like then if she, got out of a bath or a shower and her hair was all down. And it's like, well, yeah, it would kind of look like this. Okay, that's fine. That's kind of interesting. I feel like in the world, perhaps she has some kind of hair vacuum thing which sucks the hair up and then it lets go and it falls in the shape. Maybe the hairdressers, one thing I thought is the hairdressers kind of get your hair to do a style then they spray something on it, which kind of acts like hairspray, but maybe it's like tiny particles that remember the shape. Like they get fixed in a shape, and then if you heat them, they revert to that shape. Kind of like memory materials. So anyway, that's just an idea of saving time. Because her hair is pretty absurd, but it's also kind of iconic. And so far, when I've changed her hair in any major way and lost this kind of curve, it just doesn't look like her anymore. It doesn't feel like her. So, yeah. So I was still confused about this. So Flavia made me this clay model so I could understand what's happening with the hair. And I really, like, it helped in a way, but I didn't really like certain things that I was learning, like how this looks from the side, because the hair goes up and it goes around and then it comes this way and then it goes down. So it was good to learn, but yeah, it was kind of like, I'm not sure I like all these views. And then here I was drawing Miura, because I hadn't drawn Miura, and I knew that I hadn't drawn her in a while, and I knew that she, when she's first found, she's not wearing her waitress outfit, and all her other images were kind of in her waitress outfit. And when she's first found, she's just kind of in very scrubby clothes, and she's been taken, and so wanted to draw that version and then see how I could convey things with the lines, like to make things rough. Since I do have line width that I'm using now, it's not all the same line. I can get away with tiny thin lines to describe things, and like with the eyes, you can get sort of shading happening. Then I went back to the logo because I still wasn't done with that, so that was the one I last worked on. And then I thought, what if it's in white? And then this one I drew with the same inking brush as this, the dry brush. And then this one is just kind of using Procreate's own comic-y font. Forget what it's called. This one's a bit more classic, but it looks like a sort of a restaurant, not a name for a show. For a comic. And this one's like, well, I suppose that's the closest, but now I've gotten rid of that SWK thing with Space Waitress K, because I thought people would simplify SWK, but they could also simplify it as K, and that's what Flavia said, that maybe they would just call it K instead of Space Waitress K or SWK. They'll just call it K, in which case the K can be bigger. And then I also had this idea that maybe at times in the comic, she gets super serious and she's got different personalities. And I figured maybe when she does shift, the style shifts and it becomes really more gritty and like crosshatchy. And I wasn't happy with the drawings though, because it seemed cool in my head, the idea of this, but the execution, it wasn't what I had in mind, and perhaps that also has to do with just not being good enough with inking yet. But of them, I kind of like this one more. So, yeah, not sure about that. I would still like for it to work because I like the idea of things going from colored into black and white for certain shots. And then it's been a while since I'd drawn Wraith, so I thought, oh, let's draw Wraith. By this point, I was kind of understanding that I would be wrapping up Pointy Chins, and that possibly this would be the last month. And what I was seeing is I was drawing a lot of K stuff, and I felt the style isn't really changing that much anymore, just the amount of stuff I'm doing in terms of like, well, I've got to figure out this and that of K, but I was also self-censoring because I didn't want to draw too much K stuff because that would act as spoilers in Pointy Chins. But because basically I do my work, I have commissions and freelance work and then students and then Pointy Chins, I don't have much time for K. So I was doing a lot of K stuff in Pointy Chins, but not not too much because I don't want to spoil things. And then on the other hand, it's kind of not going anywhere in terms of style because the style's kind of been found. And then I realized, especially after I got the line width thing, it felt like things were really getting much more complete. The style needs improvement. It needs polishing. It needs refinement, but it doesn't need major changes. Like the big stuff seems to be there. It's just the small stuff that might need fixing. So then I realized that this is probably the time you should end Pointy Chins on, because it served its purpose. You were looking for a style that is cool, that you're happy with. You kind of found it. You have your painting thing that you can kind of do as well. So a lot of why I wanted to find the style is so I could like the work I'm doing, but I also wanted to be able to create good drawings, not just paintings, because before it felt like I could make paintings that people might think are cool, but structurally they're not sound. Anatomically they're kind of shaky. I don't feel confident. I don't feel like if I could just draw it, it would look good. I feel like the drawing wouldn't look so good. So there's a lot for me to learn, but I think I did learn most of what I wanted. So it seemed like, okay, then you should wrap up Pointy Chins and focus more on K. So that led me to think, okay, well, if I'm wrapping up, then I kind of want to draw Wraith because I haven't drawn him for a while. But then when I drew him, I realized there was a lot of stuff I didn't like about him. I didn't like the shoulder armor, the folds, I think they're called, on the side here. And I wanted them, like I kept those for this drawing, but it didn't feel very good because it kind of got in the way. And then this was stiff, the Divine Mirror, and I wanted it to be more flowy, so maybe it does stiffen up when he's using it. But otherwise it functions more like a cloth. And just minor changes. I wanted to give him Nahia's beads because Mezra and Nahia and other characters from this clan kind of have it. Yeah, I realized like if I was drawing him a lot, he would be redesigned, or he would need a few more tweaks. But that's not bad. That kind of shows that I did learn stuff from drawing K and just design in general. Two people, and then I was drawing hands. These are just my hand. I was posing it, and then wanted to get practice with the ink and inking, and like this one I think is okay, and this one is okay, but this one doesn't feel good, and this one doesn't. And I didn't really know why. Like, I like the outlines, how it gets thick and thin, but I'm not a huge fan of the way I shaded it. It just doesn't look good to me. Whereas in the sketchy version, it's fine. I'm quite comfortable with it. And here I was designing the bathtub. So they have this slime tub, and I like for everything in the stories I make, not just K, but Affinity and Wraith and stuff, I like for it to kind of make sense. In the case of K, there's a bunch of absurd things that like purposely don't make sense, like the fact that they use controllers to drive cars, or the cars are just real cars, but they have fake space stuff on it. Doesn't really make sense. I want that absurdity for sure, but also some stuff that works and kind of is like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. So they have this these baths where you put water, like water comes and it comes from below and fills up, and then you put in these slimes, and they're tiny organisms, and what happens is they kind of go into the water. Then you give them some food, which is mostly sugar, and they metabolize it. And then what happens is they form this structure as they fill the water and multiply, and it makes kind of a slime-like liquid. So this slime is made up of tiny organisms, and then you go into it, and they're kind of warm, like the water is a bit warm, and what happens is the organisms kind of attach to your skin, and they eat the dead skin, a bit like those fish that eat dead skin, and they hold on to the dirt and stuff. And then when you get out, the slime holds together. The organisms kind of grab on each other and lift off any oils or dirt on your body. And then you get out, and then the slime take any inorganic material, like let's say you had dust or anything like that, and they kind of push it all into, like they push it together until it forms these little clumps. So you get these little solid pieces of, I don't know, dirt and dust and whatever else that's inorganic. The organic material is eaten and digested. The inorganic material kind of gets formed into these clumps that then fall to the bottom, and then you scoop those out. And the slimes also kind of they poo, and some of them die, and so you have to skim those off and change the water every once in a while and add more food. But some dirty people don't change the water, so if you don't change it, what happens is eventually the water turns kind of greenish, brownish, and some of the dirtier characters, like Mub, he doesn't change his tub, so the water is a bit dirty. And then it stops working, because when they're dead, they don't grab onto the dirt, so you're just kind of sitting in your own filth. And yeah, so here I wanted to work on Kay's hair again, trying to colorize it, but from that model that Flavia made. And back to the logo. So initially, way back when, this was years ago, this was a logo I made for Kay's Space Waitress Kay. It had the triangles, because everything was triangles, and she had triangles under her eyes, so there's that. And then I thought of doing the drawing actually in Procreate, and just kind of not using a font, a typeface, but rather just trying to blob it out and get the shapes right. So I kind of got the shapes to a point I was happy with, and I thought maybe this could be one shape here, and like maybe this is contained then, I thought. So I put it in this, and I added some stars, and Bob was like, oh, this looks like Christmas, and it was like, okay. So I did this one. And I brought this into Photoshop just to get the outline, and then I did this one, and it felt like, not really good, not really happy with it. Then I drew this one, and I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And then Flavia reminded me that it can be called K, like people can simplify Space Waitress K as K, so then you can make K much bigger and keep Space Waitress smaller. And then I added this, I did a bit of a gradient, and I added this like crescent thing to kind of hold it together. And I really like that. I felt like, oh, this is almost there now. It needs to be vectorized, and little things need to be cleaned up. Like, for instance, how the W and the A connect. I'm not really happy about that. I don't mind how the P and the A connect, but the W is like, some of these things are just off by tiny amounts. Flavia did her own edit and kind of came up with that, where she made the K even bigger. And again, she said we need to work on this and get everything kind of tweaked just right. But overall, it's a logo I'm pretty happy with. It's so weird, because when you do when you make logos, there's a point where they look almost pro, but when you look at real professional logos, they're so close to amateur. If you change anything, it looks off. So what it means is they really have a, if not formula, there's like a thing that professionals do to make things look proper. And if you don't have those, they just look amateur, even if they're really close. So I feel like these are close, but just not quite there. And figuring out what is that last 5% that turns it from amateur to professional That's something we got to figure out. But generally, the logo is going to look pretty similar to this, I'm sure. And then drawing some more characters. This is Fury from Darksiders. And then trying to get more inking practice. So did the sketches at first, which I'm more comfortable with the pencil. And then I tried to use the brush to ink, but I really didn't like how it looked. It felt bad. I was trying to do the things, put the cross hatching and stuff, and also I was getting I was getting an inferiority complex because the curves were just, Procreate makes the curves nice on this brush, and it felt like I am cheating. Like, I'm not making the lines. It's just changing them. It's making them cooler than they really are. And so inked lies and getting just stupid about this stuff. Even crap looks good. Yeah. So that's that. But again, I was really unhappy with inking. It just felt like this is not cohesive. Doesn't look good. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I know I'm doing something wrong. So this was a hell of a lot of work. I got the idea that maybe I should ink some drawing from someone who's really good, who I do like the shading, and I really like the way Joe Mad shades. That's like, this is really cool to me. It's very dynamic, got tons of energy, but the amount of detail is crazy. So I thought maybe I'll just do a simple thing of his, like maybe a character, and try to ink that. And then I thought, no, just do the whole thing. Do the super detailed one. Tried to figure that out, because if you can do that, you're likely to learn a lot more than if you only go for one character or something. So what I learned is this Joe Mad is crazy. He thinks about everything. So each piece of rubble, you can see it's all designed like this whole, it's not just a circle, it's like carefully designed. It's got its own shadow. Every little thing has design to it. Even this, like, that's cool. It's got line width variation. This rock, everything. Like, he's crazy. He thinks of everything and doing it. I started feeling so overwhelmed. Like, I'm not understanding anything about inking. All I'm understanding is how good Joe Mad is, how little I understand, how shitty I am. I was getting pretty depressed about it, and just overwhelmed by how good he was, and this thought that I'm never gonna be this good. I don't care enough about art to be this good. I can only admire it, which is all pretty unhealthy, to think about. And it's true that lately I've given up on the idea that I'm going to be some kind of great artist, and I'm more content with the idea that I need to make something that's cool. And I'm interested in not just the art, but the story, the characters, things like that. And I feel like I can make stories that people find compelling. So far, people who have seen my stories really like them. And okay, so the art is part of it, but it's not all of it. And it's fine to have people who are just, super good at art. And you don't have to be better than them at everything. But anyway, yeah, I did feel like I didn't learn a whole lot. But I also thought maybe I only feel that way. And, just trying to get everything, like even this pillow, how good that is, this cushion. Crazy. How he does the different textures and stuff, all of that. So I tried not to think, oh, you didn't learn anything. Just, it felt like I didn't learn anything. It felt like, oh, I can't do it. I don't get it. I don't understand. And then I thought about Kay's hair and how I wasn't really happy with how it looked on the model. Even though it looks okay from the front view, it felt like from the side and the back, I just didn't like it that much. So I thought maybe I could go back to Kay having shaved, like her head is shaved, And I did this, and I don't really, like, I felt like it looks better, but I wanted to have some texture in there, and I will add texture to her hair so it feels a bit more shaved. But overall, it's feeling good. Like, she's pretty much done. And even if the style is a bit off, sometimes the eyes are bigger, sometimes they're smaller, roughly it always feels like Kay. It always feels like it's one thing, and it's pretty consistent. So at least I'm happy with that. And I started thinking more about the Joe Mad study I did, and how did I really gain nothing from it? And no, I learned this one thing, which is he always keeps his shading within a border. Like, he'll draw the border for the shadow, and then he'll fill it in, as opposed to leaving it open. And so here I thought of maybe it's like this, like form shadows, you go across the short axis, and the short axis is basically if you have something that's, like in this case, this is longer than it is tall. So the short axis is the tall one, so this way. And so I made the form shadows go across the short axis, and the cast shadow go along the long axis, which would be this. And in this case, it would be this. And then the local value is just this. So if I want something just to be darker, but not necessarily tell you like this is going in a certain direction, I just use these diagonal lines. And then if I want it to be a cast shadow, I go the long way, or in this case, the short axis. And then the form shadow. But this was just a theory. And then I did this one where it's like, oh, that kind of looks better. Even though there's a lot of straight lines, like I didn't do the diagonal lines, and I went along the long axis, it still kind of looked better. And then I started to wonder, why is this? So in this case, by doing the form shadows this way, what I'm doing is I'm contouring it and I'm making it look more rounded. However, in painting, you try to keep the shadows flat, because in shadows there's not much information. So you want to create it where the contrast, all the exciting stuff that shows the form happens in the terminator, which is the edge between the light and the shadow. So here I put the rounded marks, the marks that go around the form, although poorly, but forgive that. But then here I let it actually resolve where this kind of blends into this. They're all going in the same direction. There's not a difference between the shadow, this shadow, the core shadow, and the cast shadow. And I like that a lot more. And I realized that's because that's more like how shadows work. You keep the shadows flat. You keep it so there's not much going on in the shadows. Just on the terminator, there's stuff. And then in the light, there's stuff. So keeping that in mind, I then changed my approach. So here I added the shading on her hair, and then kept the shadows fairly flat. And here too, like there's a bit of area where it got cross-hatching, which I don't think I like where it cross-hatches. But overall, I feel like it's definitely better. And it shows that I did learn some stuff from doing the study, even though I get impatient. And especially when I try something ambitious, I feel almost like, well, I tried something really hard and it took a long time and I put all my energy into it and I didn't get it. But that's very impatient. And I would tell someone off if they were thinking that way. Because I would say, well, come on, you've only done one. If you did it every day for a year, I would understand if you felt like you learned nothing. But to do it, just once, that's not enough. So yeah. So here, I kept it flat. I would like to probably define this digastric plane more, but it's still better than what I was doing before. And keeping all the shadows contained. They've all got their lines around them, and that helps because it establishes the terminator, the separation between light and dark. Then I tried to do figure drawings with this 15% dry ink. And that was terrible. Not only is the result bad in my view, but the process felt terrible. I really hated it. So that was not a fun experience for me, and not one I wanted to replicate. Because if it was that I sucked at it, but I liked it, I'd probably still do it. And there are tons of people who do beautiful ink drawings and figure drawings and get, minimal lines and stuff. And I really admire that. But I don't know. It didn't feel like it was something I wanted to pursue. Whereas the other one, where I was using the white blobs, that felt good. That felt like, this is cool. I want to do more of this. So no ink figure drawings. And then here, this is basically wrapping things up. I realized I want a group shot of some of the cast members in Space Waitress K. And also, I wanted to resolve this thing because I mentioned in a previous episode that I had this, I was going to call it Tissot, and then I realized or Flavia let me know that's a real brand, and it stood for the style of the time. And then, because I think that's, there was a reference in The Simpsons where I think they had, Grandpa Simpson had garlic on his belt, and then I think it was him. But anyway, or maybe one of the other old timers, and then they were like, I think it was garlic, maybe it was onions or something. Oh, put garlic on your belt, as was the style of the time. And I found that very funny. So I wanted that in the thing, and then thought, okay, so it's not Tissot, then let's think of different names. I tried doing style backwards, elites or something, elite. Just going through different names, and eventually I got to Zyga, which felt kind of like zeitgeist, I guess, is where it comes from, where it's of the time or of the age, I guess. But I liked that, and then it felt kind of fancy and kind of strong, so it's like, okay, let's just go with that. And then here are the characters. Here's Wasso, Lucy, Nart, Brog, Ms, Maz, Kay, Miura, Arsha in the back. And then the two Snifu, Nini and Fufu, Spec, and Mub. Karen's missing, and I don't know. There's other characters as well, but yeah, just for the sake of this, it felt like this is enough. And I went ahead and inked it, which kind of looks whatever, but that's how it is. And I tried coloring it, and Flavia let me know it didn't really look good, so I tried changing it a bit, and she still thought nah, and then I changed it to this, and then she liked this one. So yeah, that's them colored. I feel like I'm not super satisfied with it. It seems like it's got a long way to go, but I am happy with the characters, the way they look. I like their expressions. I kind of feel like they do kind of go, and it's just a matter of refinement, and that will come with time and practice. But I did feel like I kind of got what I wanted when I started. I was thinking it was probably going to be a 2-year thing, Pointy Chins, that in 2 years I should be able to come up with a good style that works. And it's been a lot longer than that, maybe closer to 4 years or maybe more. I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad you stuck around for this, and I'm glad you got to see this. And maybe I'll do a retrospective of the whole thing, or what I would like to do is just keep working on K and have stuff to show you with K. So if you stuck around, especially if you stuck around from the beginning or some of the earlier episodes, but even if you're someone new, yeah, I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.